Can you confirm if the screen is up?
Yes, we can see your screen, but it will be good to put it on slideshow. All right, we can see it now, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Victoria, once again. And the session today, as has been shared by Victoria, is we are going to talk about monitoring and evaluation. It's going to be an introductory session, so nothing heavy lifting, but it is going to be a session that will allow us to understand as young change makers in Africa, what tools we can employ as we plan and execute projects in our communities. So at the end of the session, then what is it that you can take away? You should be able to have some knowledge about how to track project progress, measure project impact, share heads of plans in the projects that you may implement or that you're already implementing. So as much as possible, it would be really good if we can have an interactive, practical and youth-focused session. So please feel free to share any thoughts as we continue in the chat, and later we can reflect on your thinking. And so as we begin, maybe I wanted to indulge you and just ask that if you have never used monitoring and evaluation tools before, you can post in the chat what tools you have used. Yeah. And as we go forward with this presentation, maybe we are going to find that some of the tools you have used are the ones that we have discussed here today. So starting us off then, our topic being on monitoring and evaluation, let us start by understanding just basically what is monitoring and evaluation. So what sometimes we think of monitoring is that it is the process of tracking progress during project implementation day to day. What that means then is that anything and everything you do, as long as it is in relation to you working towards achieving a goal within a project, then that needs to be tracked. And that is what the monitoring component of M&E entails. So the good practice is don't do something today and then you plan to collect or document that which you did today, tomorrow, or 1 week later. The good practice is document this on a daily basis. So that's what monitoring entails. And evaluation is assessing the value and impact of your project at key points and intervals. So you have conducted all these activities, you have monitored, you have tracked them, but at some point you want to actually understand, was it worth it? What you were doing, was it worth it then? For you to do that, then you're going to engage in the process of evaluating the impact or the benefits that would have accrued because you implemented or acted on the activities that you had planned to do within your project. A more detailed or a more deeper meaning of monitoring is that it is a process of measuring that or what has happened, which are the results that you get from implementing activities or measuring progress against what was planned. So the assumption here is that in a project setup, you must have a plan. You must, and for you to have a plan, then the assumption again is that you have a goal, an end that you want to achieve, and so you must plan on how you're going to achieve that end. And this means that you will have a raft of things that you want to do, that you think if you did, then you're going to achieve that what you want, what you see, the vision that you have. So monitoring then allows you to measure the what, okay? And what then relates to the activities that you conduct. And it allows you to do this, but against the plan that you made. And as you had that plan, then at some point when you're looking at your plan, it was telling you that if I do A, B, C, D, then I'm going to achieve F, okay? So you keep on checking what you're doing against that which you planned to do, so that you do not end up then at some point you are doing things that are not within the what that you had planned to do, okay? So basically that is it, just keeping an eye on what you planned to do and ensuring that something does not sneak in. You do not find yourself doing something that has sneaked in that was not part of the plan, all right? Then evaluation is the process, like I mentioned earlier, of determining the worth of an activity, a policy, or a program. So this is a little bit wider. And so what the communication here is that you can apply evaluation at any level of a project, be it an activity, be it at the effect you might have, an effect you might have made regarding a review of a policy or an adoption of a policy, or things you may have done within a larger interventions in a program setup, okay? At the end of the day, you had a goal and you just want to check. You need to check that to what extent did I, in doing that which I intended to do, to what extent is it meaningful that I did what I did? Was it worth it? All right? So you apply evaluation processes to be able to start getting a feeling of that. Okay? Thank you. So generally then, we can say that monitoring and evaluation is good because it helps you to track whether your activities are working, okay? That is very important because in a project setup, then we start moving slowly towards our goal by implementing activities. Then the question we keep asking ourselves, and we must keep asking ourselves, is as we implement these activities, yes, are they actually working like we had planned them to? Because if they are not, then you need to stop and reflect. Because if you do not, then you are not going to achieve the goal that you set out to achieve. So monitoring and evaluation helps you to track, to check what activities are working. It helps you to measure the change you are creating. It helps you improve your project over time. Builds evidence to inspire others, and makes your story stronger when seeking funding or support. All these are very, very important, making the whole process of monitoring and evaluation good a good good practice within the whole project management process. So moving on, I just want to share with you that the process of monitoring and evaluation happens within a cycle. And this cycle has 5 phases. Designing, planning, collecting, analyzing, and using data. So we are going to briefly look at the phases of monitoring and evaluation cycle. And eventually then we are going to appreciate how our intentions, our objectives for this training that is about how we track progress, how we measure impact and share lessons fit into the monitoring and evaluation cycle. So the first phase is about designing the project models. And it involves designing such models as a theory of change, results framework, and the logical framework. All these are logic models that are necessary for you to effectively implement projects. And now, if you have interacted within the space of project management, then you would remember that as you plan to design a project, one of the first things you must do is develop a theory of change. Okay? That theory of change that you may develop within the process of designing a project then is also very key when you start thinking about the monitoring and evaluation components of that project. So what is a logic model? It is said to be a systematic and visual way to represent a summarized understanding of a project and how it works. Okay? Visual. What that means is the presentation of these models is going to be graphical. And there is a reason why it is graphical, because we tend to, for example, we tend to discern and understand things better through seeing than visually, than when you have to read through a number of text. So logic models are used to help teams articulate the desired long-term change and map out what needs to happen for that change to be achieved. And we are going to see these when we look at an example of the theory of change. So like I said, in planning and designing, monitoring and evaluation for a project, there are three key logic models that we must put in place: theory of change, results framework, and the log frame. So what is a theory of change? It is described, there are many descriptions of a theory of change. I've just picked a few. Some books will describe it as a roadmap to get you from here to there. That may sound very abstract, but when you think about it, I'd like you to take yourself through a process where you are in your community and you do what? You identify a need that you think something needs to be done about to bring change, because whatever it is you have identified is a problem that is affecting the community negatively. So within that thought process, what happens is then you'll be thinking that you are thinking about the situation right now, which is problematic, and it does not benefit the community. And then you start envisaging where it is that you want to go. And that means you want to take care of the problem. And when you have taken care of the problem, then you envisage that life for the community is going to be better. So there is that vision that you have, where life is going to be better, where there's going to be change. And here is the now, where then you can see that there's a problem. So a theory of change allows you to see that this is how things are now, but we need to do something about it. And if we do that, then we hope that things are going to be different and better. And that is the there. So a theory, it shows that, and when you develop a theory of change and do it very well, should you present it perhaps in a project proposal, and the funders read through it and they're able to see that it is articulating the change that you want to see, the change that you want to influence, it shows them that you know how to chart your code, you know how to see how your efforts, should they be funded, how your efforts can actually bring about that change. And we are told that it is a process of thinking in action. Why? Because a theory of change is a living document. Once you have it, it is a living document, and you must constantly go back to it as you implement and as there are constant changes in the environment you're working that may cause you to think of adapting and changing your approach to how you want to see and influence the change that you see. So you are always on your feet. And finally, it is used to define the building blocks that are necessary for effective projects. And these building blocks are the outcomes, the outputs, and the activities. So this is an example of a theory of change for a fictitious project. And in this project, what had been identified as the issue in the community were that internally displaced people, okay? Internally displaced people, their livelihoods were low. And what the structure of the theory of change is that at the bottom of it, you see the things that you need to do in order for you to achieve the vision that is at the top. So if you do all of the things that are below, then what you eventually achieve is that you improve the livelihoods of the internally displaced persons in the community where you have seen that there's this problem that you want to address. Now, there's something I want you to notice about this diagram is that some of the boxes are colored a light blue. I hope that is a blue. And then the ones on the right are not shaded. We'll talk about why there's that shading in a short while. So this is one of the logic models that you have to develop, or that needs to be in place as you think about monitoring and evaluation for your project. Okay? So such that you as a project implementer when you have this, then you have the big picture view of how anything that you're going to do, any action you're going to take, you can see it through this big picture, where it is going to take your effort in terms of influencing the change that is necessary to make life better for the target beneficiaries, for the target participants. All right? Okay. So moving on, we are going to talk about the next logic model that we're going to talk about is the results framework. And the results framework has a monitoring and evaluation practitioner or a project management practitioner, or anyone who is implementing a project that is geared towards improving the situation from what it is one of those models that you have to develop, and it is developed after you have developed the theory of change. So it is a model, it organizes the results of a project into a series of if-then relationships, and the if-then relationships are actually the conversation where you are having and saying that if I do this, or if this happens, then my expectation is that X effect, I'm going to see X effect at the next level, or the next level can be project stakeholders that you're targeting. It can be project participants that you're targeting. Okay, so this is what a results framework is able to show you, that if I am doing what I'm doing and expecting a certain result, a certain outcome, and through a results framework, then you can actually see, because it is visual, you can look at that visual and it can affirm to you that indeed, if you take action at level X that is lower, you're going to see an effect at the next level, which is a little higher. And that way you are moving from lower level activities going up. And as you're going up, then you're moving, progressively moving towards the goal that you want to see at the end. Okay? So these statements articulate the project's hierarchy of objectives, and that's why it's moving from bottom going up. And it describes the causal logic of the project. Causal because the lower level statements that you have that describe the actions that you need to take, if those actions are taken, then the statements that are higher above that, which are the higher objectives, then need to be realized. So all of this is logical. But then it gives you the confidence of believing that indeed, if you do all that you have planned to do, you are going to achieve the change that you hope to see. Okay, so it maps out the logic of the project strategy. Okay, the keyword there is strategy, making it easy to understand the logic underlying a program or a project at a glance in the results framework. The strategy here, meaning it is a model that affirms, when you look at it, if it's designed well, that gives you the picture that indeed, if all that is contained in the results framework is true, indeed, what you have planned to do will be successful. All right? So this is an example of a results framework from the same fictitious project that is addressing the issues of internally displaced persons. So reading it from the bottom, okay, on the left side, we have the objective statements, and the one at the top is goal. Then we have strategic objectives, intermediate results, and outputs. So as we have seen a little while back, is that the results framework demonstrates the causal relationships between project objectives, and it is read from bottom up. And in this case, then looking at this example, we are saying that if we achieve all of the things that are at the output level, then we should be able to realize the results at the intermediate results level. Okay, so for this one, then we'll be saying that, for example, if we start at output 1.1, it says that community water boards establish water points in IDP communities. So if this happens and water points are established, this results framework is telling us that IDPs are going to have improved access to adequate water supply. So the lower level objective, the results framework is telling us that leads to the immediate higher level objective or result. In other words, if these water points are established, there's going to be access to water in the community that will be accessible by the internally displaced persons. And if that happens, then at the next level, what is likely to happen that may have been determined because of absence or lack of access to water is that IDPs will have reduced incidences of waterborne diseases. So the story that is being said in this results framework is that perhaps there were a lot of incidences of waterborne diseases simply because there was a lack of access to clean drinking water. And we need to do something to ensure we provide or there is access to water to this community. And the things that we need to do to ensure that happens are the ones at the output level. And that if we do those things, then there will be improved access to water that is clean and good for human consumption to the extent that it does not cause the consumers to be affected by waterborne diseases. And if that happens, then we are likely to achieve our ultimate goal of these internally displaced persons having improved livelihoods, where they are experiencing less effects of using water that is not fit, that is causing them to be affected by disease. Okay, so this is important because, like we said, we have to work. We need to design the logic models which help us to see the bigger picture of where we are starting from and where we need to go. And if that happens, then we are going to be very clear, and it is going to be very easy for us to track progress towards the goal that we want to achieve. Eventually, it is also going to be easy for us to measure the impact that our projects are going to have. Okay? And if all that happens, we're able to track progress and measure impact, then we are also able to learn from our projects. We can learn about the good things that have happened in the project that are positive, that have worked towards us realizing our goals. We can also learn about things that were detrimental to our vision, that were challenges, that we learned how to mitigate, and we can share that kind of information with others who might be implementing similar projects so that they do not then also, they have a smoother and better experience of implementation, thereby leading to better outcomes for whatever it is that they are doing. So this is very important. Having a theory of change that is clear, and then from that theory of change, having a very clear results framework that clearly demonstrates how each result area is going to lead to the next. All right. I wanted to share the difference between a theory of change and a results framework. And this is why I said earlier that we have boxes in this theory of change that are shaded, and then there are those that are not shaded. So the difference here lies in when we design the theory of change, then what we do is we look at all of the things that are necessary to happen that would positively lead to us achieving the goal of the change that we want to do. So however, it is all of the things that anyone in that environment can do, not necessarily that which we are doing. So what happens eventually is that out of the theory of change, you look at the resources that you have, and you look at pathways of change. For example, the pathways, what you're seeing on the right, that is, I hope on the screen it is on the right, or the boxes that are not shaded. This is the path that was taken in this theory of change to be implemented. The path that is looking at ensuring that there is water, there is good drinking water for IDPs, okay? Somebody else could have chosen to take the path that is in the middle, that is looking at stabilization of nutrition among IDPs. And another one could have chosen to design a project around influencing the participation of IDP in agricultural production, okay? So out of this theory of change then, as a change maker, as someone who wants to influence, someone who wants to change the situation in a community, you look at these ways, these paths to effecting change. Then you evaluate them in terms of which ones can you do. And this can depend on the resources that you have or the expertise that you have. Do you have expertise in dealing with water issues? Do you have expertise in nutrition? Do you have expertise in agriculture? And the path that you choose, then that informs the results framework that you're going to develop, okay? So that is why the results framework that we have is only about water, access to water, okay? Right. So that is about the logic models and the first phase of M&E cycle, and why it is important to go through the logic models, because with that clarity, it is important that when you have that clarity, then it is going to be easy for you to track the progress of implementation of your projects. If it is not there, it is going to be difficult for you to know whether you're moving in the right direction, whether you're doing the right thing, whether what you're doing is actually going to impact positively on the target participants. All right. So with that, then we move to the next phase, which is planning. The next phase of M&E is planning. So in planning, what happens and what we need to do in planning is that we have designed the logic models, we have seen how change is going to happen. Then we must ask ourselves, what do we need to be in place to actually support our efforts as we move forward and carry out our interventions towards the goal that we want to see. Okay, and to do that, there is a raft of planning tools. Performance management plan, detailed implementation plan, feedback response mechanism, terms of reference, communications plan, lastly, indicator performance tracking table. There's probably a lot more out there, but we are going to focus on a few of these. Let us talk about the performance management plan. This is a tool that then immediately you are done with logic models and you're happy. This is the next tool that you need to design. It is the primary tool for detailed M&E planning. Remember, our topic is about how we are going to track progress, measure impact, and share. So for us to be able to do all those things, we must have the right planning tools that will support us to track the progress, measure impact, and even share lessons and learnings. So we need to develop a project, a performance management plan. It is also known as the monitoring and evaluation plan. That is a name that has been here for a very long time. What it does is it tells us what will be monitored and evaluated. Specifically, you need to think about those questions as you think about developing the performance management plan. So the questions are, how are the indicators defined? And we are going to discuss what indicators are next. Who is going to be responsible for M&E activities? When will the M&E activities take place? How will data be analyzed? How will data be used? So as you think about those questions, and as you think about any projects that you may be planning to do or have done before, asking yourself these questions as you're planning and getting the answers to them is going to ensure that your processes of tracking the implementation of your projects, measuring impact, and sharing are likely to work if you get the right answers to these questions. Okay, this is what the performance plan allows us to do. So this is an example of a performance management plan. It is usually in a form of a table, and it has columns. So the first column is called the objective statements. These are the high-level results that, as you implement, you need to achieve in order for you to deliver on the goal of your project. So in this example, then we have a column for indicators. Remember, one of the questions we were asking ourselves is, how are indicators defined? So in this PMP, this is where you'd identify the indicators and then also define them. The next set of columns is about the data collection. So you use this tool to define the methods of data collection. That means, in order for you to track progress, you need data. And so you must plan, you must think about how are you going to collect that data. Okay. And so identify the methods, determine the frequency of collecting data. Okay. It is important to determine the frequency because collecting of data has a cost element to it. Perhaps you need to travel to go to the communities where the work is happening for you to collect data. If you are low on budget and you have determined that you want to collect data frequently, you might find that you do not have the financial resources to support you to do that. So as you're thinking of the timing, you're thinking of the resources, you're thinking of not only financial, maybe human, it is very, very important. You make those considerations, okay? Because at the end of the day, let's face it, it's a project. There are costs. You have to plan, and you need to plan to succeed. So that would be one of the areas where your careful planning will ensure that you succeed within your means. Okay, then you must identify who is going to collect the data. Perhaps it is yourself, perhaps you are a team, and there are team members that are going to collect this data. You need to identify them so that it is clear who has the responsibility of doing that, and when you need the data, then you know who to get it from. And then you need to identify the respondents. From whom will this data be collected? Okay. This is the input that you're going to find in a project management plan, a performance management plan, sorry. Okay. Very critical to the M&D process, very critical to the objectives of this training that is about tracking progress, measurement of impact, and eventually being able to share the experience of implementation of the project. The last columns are means of analysis. So it is not enough to know that you have tools for collecting data, you know when, you know who's going to collect it, you know who to collect it from, but that data needs to be looked into. And not only looked into, first of all, it needs even to be stored in a way that is accessible and in a way that allows you or someone else that has the expertise to analyze data to analyze it. Because once it is analyzed, then you start getting the insight about what is happening, about the impact, about the effects that you're influencing. So the PMP allows you to do that. It gives you the provision to know, to indicate that. Then lastly, it is use of communication. We are doing all these, we're implementing the projects. We are doing all this for many reasons, for change, to improve lives. But as we do this, in the end, we also talk about this. And generally we say we might want to talk to the donors that gave us funding. It could be partners. It could be the communities we are working in. So you need to be clear about all this. This is what a PMP does. So having a clearly done performance management plan is critical to you achieving your monitoring and evaluation goal, because it sets out the roadmap of how actually you're going to succeed. And especially looking at the definitions of indicators, having indicators and having definitions, understanding what it is that is going to be measured and how it is going to be measured. Okay, so that is the importance of having a performance management plan. Okay, now we talked about the indicator, and I said we are going to discuss what an indicator is. So it is simply a measure that is used to track progress. Let us look as an example quickly at the indicator that is here. We have an objective statement that says internally displaced persons have improved access to adequate water supply. Okay. Now we saw earlier when we were looking at the results framework that water points needed to be established. Okay. So that IDPs have access to clean water. And if that happens, then IDPs are going to have improved access to adequate water supply. Okay. Now, that is what we have determined that would be in place. But the question then we ask ourselves is, how will we know that IDPs have improved access to adequate water supply? So we have to define an indicator. Now, the indicator we have reads that by year 3 of the project, 75% of IDPs indicate water access meets their household consumption needs. All right. So that is an indicator that is not only talking about being able to measure that IDPs have access to adequate water, but it is also instructing us that for us to be able to claim that we think we have succeeded in ensuring IDPs have access to water, 75% of them need to actually confirm to us that they have access to clean drinking water. So the components of having the percentages in there, the components of having the time elements at year 3, the components of saying it is water that is adequate for household consumption, okay, is part of the definition of the indicator. When you're reading it, it is very clear what you're going to measure, and when you have measured it, what it is that it is going to tell you. In this case, it's going to tell you that IDPs have improved access to adequate water supply. Okay, so indicators, they're used to track progress and assess project performance. In that sense of telling us 75% or 65%, meaning we have not reached what we had targeted, okay, it is allowing us to assess the project performance, okay? So it is something that shows you how well a system is working or a project. And if there is a problem, it helps you to determine what direction to take to address the issue. In the previous example, it is 2 years into the project and you go out and measure, you know, water points were established and you want to just check how many are reporting to be accessing clean drinking water, and you started at 10%, it is 2 years into the project, and you find that it is only 20%, 10 more are reporting. And you have a target of 75, and now you only have 12 months to go to completion of your project. Then that means you have applied your measurement criteria, you have applied the indicator, and it is telling you that there is a problem. There is something that you need to go and investigate. This is one of the benefits of having well-defined indicators for measurement of progress. So it is going to allow you to that, and you need to think about that so that you determine what the issue is and address it. It tells us what we are trying to do. It gives us the level of development we have achieved, how far we still need to go, to achieve the change that we want. Okay. It is a tool that allows you to track the performance by facilitating you to regularly document progress against project targets. The keyword is documentation. It is not enough to go and measure, but if you do not keep records, then at the end of what you're doing, then you may not be able to, you may not be able to claim having had good track of the progress. Okay, and it distills project, sorry, that was an indicator, no. So, just a moment, I need to move something here. These bars are not allowing me to see the full screen. Yeah, so anyway, the next thing I wanted to speak about, now that we have an understanding what an indicator is, then the next tool that we need to develop as we plan for monitoring of our project is called an indicator performance tracking table. Okay, so we have developed the PMP, and in the PMP, we have a column for indicators. So we have defined indicators for every level of our project, starting from the outputs up next to the intermediate results. Okay, as we move up towards our goal. The next thing then that we do, we develop the indicator performance tracking table. And this is the tool that allows us to track the performance of projects by facilitating regular documentation. And it distills the project information into short, concise table format and shows where the project stands regarding its original and revised indicators. So let's look at how an IPTT looks like. So this is an example of an indicator performance tracking table. So the tracking table, what it does is, again, it is a table, it is columnar, and the leftmost column is the results levels that we have already documented in the performance table, and then it lists the associated indicators in the next column. And then the third column is baseline. So baseline is a starting point when we are starting to implement. And we determine the baseline by conducting what is called a baseline study of our project. Then, if it is a 3-year project, then we will have the next set of columns having provision for us to indicate the progress towards our goals, our targets. So, for example, I want to look at intermediate result 2. Intermediate result 2 says IDPs improve their hand washing practices. Now, the indicator that was determined there says that by year 3, 80% of IDPs self-report increased hand washing at critical times. We were looking at this against the background that access to water has been improved. And so your expectation is that by year 3, if you go to that community and investigate, the results of that investigation are going to show you or tell you that 80% of the IDPs you might have reached in the interviews are reporting to have increased hand washing at critical times. Now, before you started implementing, you went to check what is the status of hand washing in the IDP community. And what you found was that only 30% were reporting washing hands at critical times. So this is the importance of conducting a baseline study before you start your project. Now, because it reveals to you what is the current status of the change that you want to effect. And by doing that, then it allows you to think within your means, within your resources, to what extent can you influence a change? Okay? If in this case, we are looking at a change that is 30%, then you're saying, no, this is low, then you want to influence that to be a higher. You want to increase the percentage. You want more people to report. It could be that what you find during your baseline is something negative. Whatever the rate that you determine, then as you implement, you probably want to reduce that rate, okay? So this is the importance of having an IPPT. It allows you to track over time by allowing you to set targets. And then as you work, you're working knowing that you set targets, knowing that you knew what the situation was before you did anything. And so at specific times of implementation, maybe annually, you actually go out to check, to see. And as you check, as you investigate, as you do interviews, as you hold focus group discussions to determine, then you can start seeing whether you are having a positive trend on the behaviors and practices of the participants you are reaching with interventions or not. So it is a very useful tool because the presentation, the way it is presented makes it very easy for you to see the implications of the measurement that you're getting periodically, okay? At the intervals that you have determined to go and check whether any change is happening. So this is a very important tool for facilitating your progress of implementation of your projects, right? So what you need to remember is that you designed your logic, your theory of change, you designed your results framework, then you designed your PMP, and as you did that, you identified the indicators, the measurement criteria you're going to apply that are going to show you whether the change that you're trying to effect is actually happening or you're moving towards your ultimate goal. And then you have the indicator performance tracking table, which you will be updating and will always be accessible to you to at every time demonstrate to you where you are at, okay? A very important tool. So you derive the indicators from the earlier defined tools and project documents. You populate them here. You conduct your baseline. You populate the baseline column. You determine the targets you want to achieve. And then at the times you have determined that you want to check whether there is any change, whether there is any effect due to what the activities that you're conducting, You go out and check, gather that information, analyze it, and then come and enter the actual status of the conditions at the point in time when you're measuring. Okay, so that is the IP, the indicator performance tracking table, very critical for tracking project implementation progress. Okay, so our next, the next slide, this next slide is about, we want to think about the collection of data. We actually want to think about how now we do the tracking, or what tools we use or are useful to us to allow us to track, okay? This is happening at the third phase of the M&E cycle. So some of the tools that become very useful for tracking of progress are, of course, the data collection tools, okay? Like we said, you must collect data. If you want to track progress, you must collect data on what you want to track. So you will need the data collection tools. Then there is a logic model that I have not talked about that you also design at the design stage or the design phase, the logical framework. We'll talk about it. And then another one is a Gantt chart and the IPTT that we just talked about. These are some of the basic or must be in place tools that you need in order for you to effectively track project implementation progress. And I am going to talk about the log frame. So it is a logic model. One of the three that we had mentioned earlier, the TOC, the results framework, and a logic, the log frame. It's a logic model, and it describes the objectives, the indicators that we had determined earlier, the measurement methods of those indicators, and assumptions that we must make about what we want to do. And those assumptions then are about if they are true or not true, how are they going to affect our quest to effect some change. Okay, it is a tool. It is used for systematic planning. It is a planning tool. It has many uses. It is a planning tool. It is also an implementing tool, and in monitoring and in those aspects, then it allows you to track progress, and it is also employed in the evaluation of projects. Okay, so the components that are in the log frame that allow you to track progress, one is the indicator. We have interacted with indicators. Then the measurement method. So far, we have not talked about measurement methods of the indicators that we would have defined. There is none of the tools above have the measurement methods, but the log frame then has that. Okay? That's why it becomes important, and that allows you to track implementation and monitoring of project progress. Okay. The measurement methods identify how the project will gather the data to track the progress of the indicators. They are otherwise called the means of verification, that what we are saying we did, we actually did it, or it actually happened. So this is an example of how a log frame would look like for the same fictitious project that we have. And at the top of it, we shall have a row that has the project goal. In our case, the goal here was that internally displaced people in the Delta River region have improved livelihoods. Then the first column, just like in our previous tools is going to have the objectives of our project. Okay, strategic, intermediate, and outputs. Now, this is a short, a small example of a log frame, but below the outputs, most log frame designs will also list the activities that are necessary for us to achieve the outputs that would be listed in that log frame, okay? So for the purpose of this presentation, then I have not included the activities below there. So that the first column being about the levels of results in the project, then the second column in a log frame lists the indicators that are associated or that must be tracked in order for us to know whether our results in column 1, whether we are moving towards realizing the results in column 1. Okay, so we have already talked about these results. We have already talked about indicators. Now the third column is about the means of measurement, okay? The measurement method or the means of verification. This is, we have not had an opportunity in the previous tools to have this. So for example, looking at output 1.1, which says community water boards establish water points in IDP communities. In this project, it has been determined that there will be 3 indicators, okay? One is that by year 340 water points are established. So if you are tracking progress at year 3, then you are going to check have 40 water points been established. The second indicator is talking about by year 3, 10 trained community water boards are operational. Okay, so you will be checking, you go out there and investigate. Do we have 10 or do we have 5 or maybe we have 15? Somehow with the little resources we had, we achieved more. The third one is by year 3, 100% of water points meet water quality standards. Okay, so it's not just about access to water, but is it access to safe water? So the third column, which is about the means of verification, which is the next thing that, the new thing here that we're talking about, then it is telling us, or it will always be informing us, that for us to be able to get the information we require by use of the indicators we have, then we can find that information in quarterly water board reports. Okay, so this is the usefulness of a log frame, that it not only lists the indicators you have to track, but it actually also lists where you are going to go to in order to get the information that speaks to the indicators you have defined. So in that sense, it becomes a critical tool that supports you to track the progress of project implementation. Okay. The last column is about assumptions, like I said, and these are very important because the assumptions, you know, it's like you need to think about the external environment to the vision of your project. What is it out there that might perhaps cause you not to succeed? You need to determine that, and then once you've done that, that goes into this column. And that means you'll always be looking out for it, because should that condition happen, if it is supposed to impact negatively on your project, then it means you may not finish the implementation that you had started. So this then becomes a very critical tool to support the tracking of progress. Now, we're saying that if you're able to track progress, eventually we will be able to apply the necessary tools to measure impact. Okay. Right. So that is about the log frame. That is very critical in tracking of progress. What you have on screen is another critical tool, and it is a Gantt chart. Now, what is important about a Gantt chart is that it is the one tool that allows you to track the implementation of your planned intervention, your planned activities against time. Okay? It allows you to list or to plan when you intend to do which activity, and allows you to know at what time should you have completed the implementation of that activity. It allows you to define dependencies between activities. When you are implementing practically out there, you'd find that there are activities that if they have not happened, then you cannot do certain other activities. Through a Gantt chart, which again is a graphical tool, it allows you to define those dependencies, and you can see them quickly at a glance when you open your Gantt chart, okay? So in that sense, it allows any project implementer to be able to track implementation progress against the schedule that was determined for project implementation. This is important because, for example, in the example we have been looking at, that project of improving the livelihoods of internally displaced persons was supposed to be conducted in 3 years. So supposing there are assumptions that had not been made well and they have affected the implementation to the extent that then this project cannot be completed in 3 years, maybe 3 years and 6 months, what happens is that all of the activities that would be affected by whatever unforeseen event, then you'd come to your Gantt chart and adjust your schedule of implementation of activities, which then allows you to have a very good forecast and projection of when you're likely to complete the project. The issue of schedule is very important in project management because schedule is one of those promises, especially when you are implementing a project that you are being funded by a donor. You will tend to make a promise to the donor that by time X, I shall have completed and I shall be able to demonstrate how our efforts have influenced or impacted on the target participants. So this becomes a very important tool because of that. Okay. Right. Fine. So that was about tracking of project progress. Allow us to move to how then, or what do we need to be in place for us to measure the impact of our project. So one thing I must say that all of the tools, all of the frameworks, all the models we have talked about, they are used throughout the cycle of a project. And that is why you can see here, on this list, what needs to be in place, for example, is SMART indicators, We have talked about indicators, but we have not talked about them being smart, which we're going to see shortly about smart indicators. And we are also going to acknowledge that the indicator performance tracking table is also key to measurement of impact. Then the theory of change, that was the first thing that we need to create as we visualize how change is going to happen, is also very key because for theory of change, like we said, it's a living document, and any changes in the environment that then affect how you saw the change happening is going to be informed by you having that theory of change in place, because you can go back to it and ask yourself, when we were designing, this is how the environment was. Politically, for example, the environment was supportive, but maybe that has changed. So a theory of change becomes one of those tools that, looking at it as you look at what the implementation environment looks like, can start giving you insights in the extent to which what you're doing is going to have impact overall. Then there is baseline and endline data. So baseline, we have spoken about that when we were saying that as we develop the IPTT, we have opportunity to indicate what was the situation at the time of project design before we started implementing. And we do that by conducting the baseline, which gives us those metrics. And those metrics allow us to set targets. Because if we have what the situation was, and then we set targets, and then we start tracking our progress towards realizing those targets, then we can start having a conversation about the impact of what we are doing. Okay. Then the last one is outcome harvesting. We are going to talk about that as a tool or a methodology that allows us to have a conversation about the impact we are making with our interventions. Okay. So we have said we want to talk about indicators being smart. And the word smart, I'm sure most of you, I have a feeling you already are familiar with it, but it is all about being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And this, we are saying we're talking about smart in relation to our indicators, the indicators we have defined, those statements that allow us to measure progress. Okay, so here I have an example of an indicator. One is an abstract indicator and then the same indicator, but it has been defined in smartly. Okay, it has been defined to be specific, to be measurable, to be attainable, to be relevant, and to be time-bound. So yes, you have an intervention you want to do. You want to train youth on climate smart agriculture, right? And you say, okay, how will I know I have trained these? Or how will I know the youth that I trained on climate smart agriculture are actually practicing climate smart practices in their agricultural projects? So you think quickly and say, as long as I have trained them, I know they are doing this. So what I want to do, I'm just going to track the percentage or the number of the youth that I trained. Okay, in our case, this indicator is talking about percentage of youth trained on project tracking tools. right?
Hello, sir. We can't hear you.
What about now?
Yes, we
Can you
can
hear
hear
me
you,
now?
sir. Please check your message.
Oh, I can't. Oh, okay. Thank you. Because I am sharing the screen, I cannot. I don't have access to messages. Just a moment.
You can also check your WhatsApp message, sir. I left some messages there for you.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just a moment. All right. Thank you. A bit. Okay. I am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. I am. We are about to wrap up. So allow me to share a few more slides and we call it a day. Right, so as I was saying, so it is very important when we start thinking about the measurement of impact that we use smart indicators. Because at the end of the day, we want to be very clear of the impact or the effect that we had when we reached the target participants of the project, okay? So in this case, rather than just have percentage of youth trained on project tracking tools, then the indicator is revised to read percentage of youth participants successfully completing equal to or more than 3 module project tracking training as measured by achieving either 80 or more than 80% score on the end of course assessment within the 4-week training cycle. So remember, you will be required to define indicators which will allow you to measure progress. So the message here is, please ensure that those indicators are smart, okay? They actually have elements of quality in them. For example, completing a 3-module project tracking training, that is an element of quality. When someone looks at that, then they're looking at this youth and they're asking them, did you go through 3 modules? You know, what kind of training did you attend, right? So it's very important because that allows you then, as you have collected your you have done your data collection, it allows you to analyze. Then you're analyzing with very credible data to demonstrate the impact you have achieved. All right. Lastly, allow me to speak about outcome harvesting. So in terms of tracking impact, so far we have been talking about doing this through tracking of the indicators against that which we said we were going to do. But there is impact out there that cannot be measured quantitatively, okay? This is where a tool like outcome harvesting then becomes useful when we want to learn about our impact. And outcome harvesting is a participatory evaluation method. It is designed to identify, formulate, validate, and make sense of outcomes, the changes that we thought we would achieve by implementing that which we were implementing, okay? So that is the importance of outcome harvesting. And it has a lot of benefits. For example, use of outcome harvesting when the target is youth, then it is youth empowering to use outcome harvesting to understand the impact, because it focuses on that which the youth feel has been the impact on their lives if they were the targets. It is flexible and adaptive because it captures real world impacts as they emerge. You know, you're getting these from the participants. It is rich in quality, okay, and encourages accountability because you're getting this firsthand from the targets that you were implementing with. How it is done is you come up with the outcome harvesting design where you define what an outcome needs to look like, okay? Then you identify those outcomes. Then you go out and engage with the targets to confirm whether they actually experience the changes. Then you substantiate by use of evidence, you analyze, and then you can use the findings for sharing about the impact of your project. This is an example of an outcome harvesting process. So the outcome statement, just one example, reads: youth leaders from Riverside Youth Hub began organizing monthly neighborhood cleanup events. Okay, so that is the outcome that you have determined happened. The actors were youth leaders, 10 of them. The type of change, behavioral and relational. Okay, that is the description of the outcome. Then, how did the project contribute? It contributed by training and small grants that enabled youth to plan and promote community events. Okay. Then, what were your sources of evidence? Meeting notes, local newspapers coverage, participants, testimonies, and so forth. A very useful tool for you to determine impact without having to rely on the indicators that you defined in the project. Okay. Lastly, it is important to share knowledge and learnings. What we have on the screen are some of the approaches that can be used to gather insight into that can be used to share or to plan for sharing or learning. More significant change: before action review, after action review, community feedback, and youth peer sharing circles. So maybe I can just mention the before action and after action review. What these tools do is that before you do anything, before you conduct an activity, you sit down with your team and you ask yourself some questions. For example, what is the objective of this activity? After we do it, what is it that we expect to see? Okay? You ask yourself those questions, put down the notes, go and implement your activity. Then once it is done, you come back and do the after action review. You ask yourself another set of questions. So we have done it. Did we achieve the objectives we had set out to achieve? Did we see the results that we had set out we had thought we would see? And based on those reflections, you achieve some sharing of information, not only within yourself, but it's information you can also share externally about the effectiveness of the approaches you employed in conducting or implementing your project. Okay. So to wrap up, My last message to you is that M&E is very useful because it is going to help you as youth to ensure that you stay on track. That means you do that which you set out to do, and you can also track and measure and see that the changes you hoped to see are being realized. And if they are not being realized, then you can learn what is it that did not work. It is important because it also allows you to learn and grow. As you learn, of course, you grow. You learn about the challenges you had and how to mitigate them. It is useful for showing real change, okay? If it is done well, it actually demonstrates that which happened. Just because you're doing it and you're monitoring, you're implementing, you're monitoring, you're keeping records, it allows you to inspire others, because when they come to you and you're giving them stories of what you're doing and you have evidence about it because you applied monitoring and evaluation tools, you will inspire them, okay? Finally, thank you very much for being patient and attending today's session. Back to
Thank
you,
you so
Victoria.
much, Mr. Celestine. Can we appreciate our facilitator in the chat? Thank you very much, sir, for all of the insights and the lessons that you have shared this morning. Thank you so much. Let's keep it coming, guys. Let's keep it coming. Let's not be quiet. Let's appreciate him. You can either do that by sending emojis or text in the chat box. Thank you so much. So we have gone a bit above our time because we're supposed to be on break now. And we have some questions for you, Mr. Celestine, before you go. We have about 4 questions, and I'd like to read them out to you so you can quickly answer them before we go on break. Just before I do that, let me apologize to all our participants on the call. I know that we've shot above the time. This is usually your break time. But please bear with us. Let's answer your questions before we let you go on break and get ready for the next session. All right. So the first question, Mr. Celestine, someone asked about the lock frame. That what is lock frame?
Okay. So a log frame. The name log frame is short form for logical framework. And a log frame is one of the logic models that is supposed to be designed or developed when you are designing a project. Okay. I had mentioned earlier that there are 3 of them that are very important to support the monitoring and evaluation functions. Okay. One is the theory of change, which is a high-level overview of the project in terms of what is it that needs to happen until you can see the change that you envisage. Then the second one is a results framework, which is simply a graphical representation of the project that you want to implement, that you have identified from the theory of change that your resources can support. And then the log frame, which is a tool that will allow you that you can use while you are implementing, and it will allow you to monitor progress. Okay. It will also be used to evaluate the impact of your project at the end of it. So it is a tool that has many functions that you need to develop as you design a project. Of all of those that I have mentioned, an implementation tool, a monitoring tool, and an evaluation tool. So it is a tool to support you as you implement projects.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for providing that clarity there. Another question is, what is the most important question to consider when designing a baseline survey? The person is asking for sample question.
The most, when designing a baseline survey, the most?
Yes, when designing a baseline survey, the question is, what should we consider when designing a baseline survey? And the person is asking for any sample question that can help him understand what to look out for when he's designing a baseline survey.
Okay, that is a very wide question, but let me try and give you some a general view of this. So, a baseline, first of all, the use of a baseline is that it is supposed to inform you as an implementer before you start implementing. It is supposed to generate information about the status quo, the existing status about the issue you want to address before you start addressing it. Okay? Because if you do not know the current status before you start implementing, then how will you know? It is going to be challenging for you to know whether what you are doing, what you're implementing within your project is actually bringing about any positive impact on the target, okay? So, because of that, remember now, as you're thinking of designing a baseline survey, you must have a set of tools that support you to do that. And one of them is the logical framework that we have just talked about. It is a project design tool, is a project implementation tool, evaluation and monitoring. So within the log frame, then you have the indicators of the things that you want to measure. These indicators are about the change you want to see at the different levels of your implementation. So what happens is that you use the log frame, focusing on the indicators that are in the log frame that are going to support you to measure, and you frame the questions you want to ask when you go into the community around the indicators that are in your log frame. Okay, so an indicator like the percentage, what we just talked about, let's use the simple one, the percentage of youth who are applying or who attended a training on project tracking tools. Okay, the existence of such an indicator then is telling you that before you start implementing, you want to go out into the community you are targeting and want to find out just how many, to what extent do, say, the youth actually have knowledge about project tracking tools. That can be one question. To what extent? Okay. Or,
all right, sir.
Okay. So that is one quick example.
All right.
But you use existing tools that is like the log frames to inform the generation of the questions you want to ask in a baseline.
All right. Thank you so much, sir, for providing answers to that question. And this is all we can take for this morning's session because of our time. Thank you again, Mr. Celestine Okubo, for joining us this morning. I can already see quick feedback that our participants are sharing, and I'm glad to know that they found the session very insightful. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, for the next session, we're going to be starting the next session at 12 on the dot. That's 12 noon West African time. So this is 11:55, and I understand that some of you have been seated for quite a while. So take this opportunity to stretch your legs, grab water, grab some quick snacks, grab coffee, just move around and take a breather before we get on with the next session. If you have more questions, we can take it to the WhatsApp group where we can have further conversations there, or you can keep your question till the end of the session, the next session, and then we'll take it all together along with the announcement. Please ensure that you fill the attendance for this session. I know that a lot of you are having some issues, probably the network. Just try and refresh your browser and then attempt it again. Make sure you fill your attendance because there will be no attendance after today to refill if you have missed this opportunity. So make sure you do that, and see you at 12 noon for the next session. Thank you very much.